Have you ever wanted to make the most decadent, delicious, and dense pound cake you've ever made? Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, I will be demonstrating how to make such cake. But before we do any cooking or handle any food, we need to wash our hands. An important thing to remember is that if you're wearing long sleeves, you want to make sure they are nice and rolled up so your sleeves don't get caught in any of the food or utensils that you're using. Now that our hands are nice and washed and our sleeves are nice and rolled up, it is now time to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Now that our oven is preheated to 350 degrees, it is now time to gather the necessary cooking utensils we're going to be using for this cake. The first thing we're going to be needing is measuring cups. The second thing we're going to be needing is a KitchenAid mixer. The third thing we're going to be needing is a tube pan. Fourth thing we're going to be needing is teaspoons. The fifth thing we're going to be needing is a wire tray rack. The sixth thing we're going to be needing is a rubber cooking spatula. And the final thing we're going to be needing is a glass mixing bowl. Now that we have all of our kitchen utensils assembled, it is now time to assemble our ingredients we're going to be using for the cake. So we are going to be needing 3 cups of sugar, 3 cups of our all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a ½ cup of vegetable shortening, a teaspoon of baking powder, our 5 eggs, our 2 sticks of butter, and a ½ teaspoon of our fine salt. Now that we have all of our cooking ingredients assembled, it is now time to start mixing. The first step we're going to do is that we are going to mix together our ½ cup of vegetable shortening and our 2 sticks of butter into our KitchenAid mixer. That's why we got our rubber spatula, right? In an event that you manage to get butter on the side of the bowl, make sure to use your rubber spatula to scrape it off and off your fingers too. Next, we're going to add our vegetable shortening. This is where our rubber spoon really comes into play. Now that we have our vegetable shortening and our butter in our mixer, we are now going to blend it up until it is nice and creamy. While our vegetable shortening and butter is mixing, we're going to start adding our 3 cups of sugar to the mixture nice and slowly. Now that our mixture is nice and creamy, it is time to add the eggs one at a time. Now it's time to mix our dry ingredients together in our glass mixing bowl. The first ingredient we're going to do is a ½ teaspoon of our fine salt. This is always the worst what happened in the last video. Let me pour out correctly. Our ½ teaspoon of baking powder. Now it's time to add our 3 cups of flour. We're going to use our cooking spoon to mix together our dry ingredients. Now we're going to measure out our 1 cup of milk. Alright guys, now it's time for the little more tricky part of the recipe. So, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be mixing in our dry ingredient concoction with our milk. However, we're going to be mixing them in alternately, alright? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pretty generous spoonful of our dry ingredient concoction. We're going to add it into the blender, just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to pulse the blender just a little bit, just like this. Get the flour nice and wet so it doesn't splash out. Then we're just going to mix it in normally, just like this. Just like that. And we're going to cut. And we're going to add our milk in. Just like that. And again, we're going to pulse the blender just a bit. Make sure the milk gets nice in so we don't make a big mess. There we go. And we're going to repeat this until all of our dry ingredients and our milk are gone. And last but not least, our teaspoon of vanilla extract. Let it mix in. Now our dough is ready to be put in our pan. Alright guys, so before we put our batter into our pan, we need to grease it first, okay? Just gonna take some simple canola oil spray. Get nice and greased up. Guys, now it's time to dump our batter into our greased up pan. So we're going to lift up our blender just like this and get our dough off like that. Alright guys, so once all the dough is off of our beater, we're going to remove it just like so. Take our mixing bowl off, and we're going to begin to pour our batter into the pan, just like this. You want to do this nice and slow, guys. Make sure you get all the batter out of the mixer and into our pan. Then you're just going to want to smooth the top out. Sure, it's somewhat smooth at least. That looks good. Alright. Last thing we're going to do, guys, we're just going to give it a couple hard taps to get all the air bubbles out. Alright guys, now it's time to put our cake batter into the oven for about an hour to an hour and a half. So we're going to open up our oven, slide it right on in, and we're going to set our timer to an hour and 15 minutes to start with. And then once after that, if we find it that it's not cooked right, we're gonna insert a toothpick in it, make sure it's cooked. We can add another 15 minutes to that, make it an hour and a half. So our timer's up. We're gonna take our little toothpick right here, or skewer, poke it right in the middle. All right, it's looking done. We're getting no residue on the end. So we're gonna pull it on out. Just like that, awesome. We're gonna put it on our wire rack right here. And we're gonna let it sit for about an hour to an hour and a half. All right guys, here we have our finished pound cake product. So just to review, the ingredients we're going to be needing is going to be a ½ pound or about 2 sticks of butter, a ½ cup of vegetable shortening, 3 cups of sugar, 5 eggs, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a ½ teaspoon of fine salt, a ½ teaspoon of baking powder, 1 cup of milk, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And the cooking materials we will be needing will be a KitchenAid mixer, a tube pan, measuring cups, a teaspoon, a wire tray rack, parchment paper, and a glass bowl. So remember, the first thing you're going to do is that with a mixer, you're going to cream the butter and shortening together. You'll then add the sugar a little at a time. Then you're going to add the eggs, one at a time, beating after each addition. You are then going to stir the dry ingredients together in your glass bowl and add to the mixer alternately with the milk, starting with the flour and ending with the flour. We are then going to mix in our teaspoon of vanilla. We are then going to pour our batter into a greased and floured tube pan, and then we are then going to bake it for an hour to an hour and a half until a toothpick can be inserted into the middle and no residue comes out on it. You're then going to have it sit for about an hour to an hour and a half to cool down, and then you can chow down on it.